Ryan Bartow, welcome into the game in Tuscaloosa. I hope you're doing well, sir.
Doing great. How's everything up in Alabama today?
Well, we're still recovering from that Clemson defeat. I mean, it takes a few weeks to sort of get over that a little bit, but we're making it. We're making it. I mean, we're recruiting gives us a little appetizer for spring practice, and then spring practice into prediction season, and then right into college football season. So we're struggling, but we're holding our head up a little bit.
Yeah, well, gosh, if you guys are struggling, I wonder what the rest of the world is thinking, because the Tide is on deck here to sign their number one class in the country for the 7th year in a row. They've won 4 titles in the last decade. They're in the midst of a dynasty. So if you guys are struggling, I feel bad for the rest of the world.
Well, we just asked the question on Twitter a couple of minutes ago, and this is sort of the theme of today's show. Do you think it's unreasonable to think that Alabama should win a national championship every year? That's our Twitter question, sort of our theme of the day. We're asking callers to participate a little bit because where Nick Saban has put this ceiling, it's like a national championship or bust. If they don't win it, some people look at it as a disappointing on the season.
As long as Saban is there, that is the goal, just like Belichick at the Patriots.
Sure.
Enjoy it, and for both fan bases, as long as they can still somehow last at those places, because that's as good as it can get and will ever get. And, dealing with fans, their expectations, it's always going to be more unrealistic than realistic. I deal with it on message boards every day throughout the country. But they got it rolling, so you enjoy it while you can. And, they got it at a high level, and this class in 2017 might be as good as any that they've brought in.
Wow. And that's a big statement when we talk about, let's look at it from a historical perspective.
Right.
Are you saying that this class could be the best that Nick Saban, and he could still add some pieces too, that the best he's ever brought in?
Well, those ones have proof in the pudding, but I'm just saying it's right up there. It's one of them. I mean, you have the top running back in the country and Najee Harris, potentially the top offensive tackle, and Alex Leatherwood. He's a guy that I don't think will be able to duplicate Jonah Williams' deal because Lashley is there. I expect him to be the left tackle, but Leatherwood's a future pro. I think Dylan Moses, are you kidding me? A 5-star linebacker from Baton Rouge, and you go in their backyard, taking a kid that's like a relative of LSU coaches. He's a stud. I think Jerry Judy's as good a wide receiver as you're going to find in the country. He's like Calvin Ridley, but he's actually 17 when he gets to school, so he's all upside. Tua Tagovailoa, he could be the future Heisman winner. He's unbelievable. As good as Jalen Hurts was, he can do some stuff in terms of pushing the ball down the field that's incredible, very accurate, and a tremendous leader, too. And then Isaiah Buggs is going to play right away. He already showed in bowl practice in January that he's a grown man, so he'll be able to help them right out of the gate. They're just studs on top of studs. Terrell Shavers is 6'6" receiver that clocks a 4.4 laser. Calvin Johnson did that, so he's got some tremendous upside. I think Billy Napier at the receivers coach for Alabama was under pressure a year ago because they did not sign receivers good. This year, he's going to sign the number one receiving class in the country. Shavers and Judy are already enrolled. They've led for 5-star out of Louisiana, Devontae Smith, for 2 years. I expect them to get him on signing day, along with 4-star explosive receiver Henry Ruggs out of in-state, who I expect the Tide to get to. So, those are 4 potential NFL guys, and that's a position they needed to upgrade at. And Tua is going to have some dudes in years to come. They went down to South Florida when they had Cristobal and signed absolute beast in Van Darius Cowan, outside linebacker. Daniel Wright, who you guys remember, his brother Major Wright, the stud from the Gators. They got him to flip from Florida State at the end there. So he's a tremendous upside guy. Christopher Allen from Louisiana is a 4-star grown man. I'm talking 6'4", 240 linebacker. Xavier McKinney, everybody thought he was going to go to Clemson. Clemson had all the help in the world at his high school, and they go and get him to flip at the Under Armour game, get him back in the boat. So this class is dudes on top of dudes. Think about every guy that I just mentioned. Every one of those guys would be the crown jewel of any other class they were in.
Let me go to Christopher Allen. You brought up his name a couple of minutes ago there from Southern University
Right.
Lab School in Baton Rouge. There's been some talk that LSU's trying to get back in it with just a few days left. Let me ask you, what is the latest?
The latest is all indications look like he's going to stick with Alabama, just like Dylan Moses did. Now, call me next Tuesday. I might have something a little different when it really tightens up there. But again, this guy is miles away from LSU's campus. To go in there and do that is impressive. But the only guy that really can and is able to do that is Burton Burns. When LSU wants a guy 9.5 out of 10 times in state, they're getting him. The only team that can go there and get the studs, and it only happens every blue moon, is Alabama. You saw that with Cam Robinson. You're going to see it with Devontae Smith. You saw it with Dylan Moses, maybe as big a coup as any of them, and then Chris Allen on deck too.
All right, as we go through these final targets, I'm looking here on BamaOnline.com, and what a great job they do of covering the University of Alabama. We are now talking to Ryan Bartow as 24/7 Sports. Let me go through the guys and just get a prediction here. Aubrey Solomon, there from Leesburg, Georgia.
Aubrey Solomon, I'm very, very deep in that recruitment. He's down to Alabama, who he goes on record saying that they've been the leader for about a month now. Really had a good visit to USC just 2 weekends ago. He's originally from Fresno, so he has some ties there. I actually made the first crystal ball prediction during U.S. Army Week for Aubrey to go to Michigan, and I'm riding with that. All indications look like on signing day that he'll recommit and stick with the Wolverines.
All right, LeBron Ray there from Madison, Alabama.
Alabama all day.
All day. It's just not public right now. He's got about 30 offers. Who is the second place team in Alabama's got to fight away, or is there one?
No, I mean Tennessee is trying, but we all know where he's going.
All right, and you said Devontae Smith, the wide receiver there from Louisiana. You think he's going to roll with the Crimson Tide?
Right. I crystal balled him to Alabama maybe a year and a half ago, and I haven't budged it.
All right, and Henry Ruggs from Montgomery, you say he's rolling with the Tide, right?
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
Jerez Parks, I think tomorrow he's going to make his decision, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yes, Jerez is on deck here. Now, I remember seeing him for the first time at a Miami camp 2 years ago. He walked in 6'5", 240, catching passes with one hand, running a 4.6. He's a guy that the whole family loved, the Florida Gators, grew up liking them. In July, I got some different intel that Alabama was in there great. And there was about 20 picks on the crystal ball, similar to the Aubrey Solomon situation. All said Florida. I went with the intel and picked Alabama, and that's who he will publicly choose. And he'll play outside linebacker for the Tide, and potential to be a force off the edge.
Nico Collins, they're from Pinson, Alabama.
Right. Now, he's a guy that will not pick the Tide. They haven't really been in there.
Okay.
That's more of a Michigan or Georgia deal.
Okay. Is it Christopher Henderson, another product there out of South Florida?
Yeah. C.J. Henderson's been a long time lean towards Florida. Alabama's making a late push for him, but I expect him to publicly commit to Florida on signing day.
So how many do you think the signing class will end up at Alabama?
Well, how many did I predict? How many commits do they got? Go over and how many did you ask me there?
You got 12 early enrollees right now, and there's 12 hard commitments. So you've got 24, and then you've got 3 or 4 additional there. So we may, and I just making sure I was covering all the bases when we talk about numbers. This class.
So if they're at 24 now, that's 4 or 5 more. Ryan Ray, both receivers,
Henry
and
Ruggs,
Jerez Parks.
Anybody else out there that could be one of these late guys?
You went over all the guys that they're still going after.
Okay. Let me ask you, I want to go back to Tua here just for a couple of minutes. You talked about throwing the football. What do you see in this young man? I mean, can he really come in and push Jalen Hurts, in your opinion?
He's competitive. He's mobile. And at the opening in July, all the best QBs are there, throwing to the best receivers, doing 7-on-7. Most of the QBs there are conservative. They're throwing checkdowns. Not this guy. This guy's a dual threat, but he's doing 5 and 7 step drops. He's throwing 15-yard outs. He's throwing in tight windows, and he's accurate. But most of all, he's not scared to push the ball down the field. So you got a guy that early in the recruiting process, we're thinking, okay, this guy has to go to an Oregon or something where he's in the gun just because he's a shade over 6 foot. Well, now he's shown in many different levels that he can be under center. He can do that stuff. He can do the gun stuff. And he's got this great spirit and upbeat attitude to him where all his teammates love him around him. That's one of the main things you want in your quarterback is to be a leader like that. So off the field, A+ intangibles, tremendous in terms of when the play breaks down, he can go 60 to the house. He can throw it deep. I think, he's going to be a Hawaiian treat for Tide fans for years to come. I think they'll absolutely love him.
Ryan, when we look at, and when I look at Tua and I see him throwing the football, I described it earlier, it's effortless. It's just that touch on that football. It doesn't look like, it just doesn't look like he puts a lot. The ball is so crisp and it comes out so well. It's a nice touch on the football when he throws it.
Right, and he throws it fearless, but at the same time it's accurate, and that's what you look for.
So you expect him to push Jalen Hurts in year number 1?
Well, Jalen, I think, overachieved, and we had him higher than anybody else at 24/7 Sports as one of our top guys, and he showed. As a coach's son, he led him all the way to the title game within a couple seconds of winning it all. As a true freshman, he did almost as good as any true freshman has ever done, regardless of position. So that's your guy, that's your leader. At the same time, Tua is able to do some things in the pass game and at times be able to run just as good. So that's what you want in your depth chart. You want between 1 and 2 to not have much difference, and he'll be able to compete and make that roster better, and that's what Nick wants there.
Let me flip across the state here just for a couple of minutes and spend a little time talking about the Auburn Tigers. What do you see in their signing class so far?
I think it's been solid. I think they went into the season on the hot seat, so the recruiting was a little down because of that cloud. At the same time, I thought Kevin Steele and Brett Lashley saved their job for them and did a great job. So now they're got some momentum going into the offseason. Obviously, getting Jared Stidham means the Auburn Tigers will open the season as a top 10 team next year. He's that good and he's that much of a difference maker. I really like their offensive line class. Calvin Ashley is a franchise bookend left tackle. We've known about him for 5 years now. He's a guy that it won't be long before he starts at one of the tackles for the Tigers. Nick Brahms is a 4-star offensive lineman from Navarre, Florida. He did a good job at the U.S. Army deal, so there's a lot of upside with him as well. So I think they've evaluated good, especially in-state. But the best commit they got, Darian Moultrie from Birmingham, he's as good a linebacker as you're going to find in the country. He's a violent player. If any of your listeners get a chance to flip on his senior video, it's better than drinking Cuban coffee in the morning. It'll get you jacked up. He's a headhunter, and he will be, like a Theo Spice, that kind of linebacker for the Tigers.
Ron, can anybody knock off the Crimson Tide at that number 1 spot according to 247 Sports?
Well, I think Ohio State, 1 through 20, their class is just as good as Alabama's. Ohio State's recruited this cycle as good as they possibly can, but they're not going to take as many. they'll probably be done with all their signatures and in the clubhouse by noon on signing day, where Alabama will probably still be fighting for a couple kids in the afternoon. So quality-wise, Ohio State's class is right on par with Bama, but Alabama will have a deeper class, and that'll give them their 7th straight recruiting title.
But Ron, how does Nick Saban do it? Because he's asking these guys to come in and compete with other 4 and 5 stars, with other programs are opening up and saying, hey, if you come here, you're probably going to be an instant impact guy. You could be an instant impact guy at Alabama, but I mean, you may have to sit on the pine for a little bit. How does he continue to do it the way that he does?
Kids want to play for a winner. He's won more than anybody in the last decade. Kids want to play in a place that'll get them to the NFL. It's the closest thing to the NFL that you can find. And there's so many good players. I mean, you're talking to a guy that went through 362 high schools since last signing day. If you don't get a guy, go to the next high school because it's just as good. So he's finding the kids that want to compete and aren't scared of competition and want all those things that I said. And there's so many good ones that he's able to get as many good ones as anybody. And he's done it over and over, and he'll do it again next Wednesday.